To the August 11, 2016 Cumberland County Commissioners Workshop meeting. Please rise and join me in standing pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call this meeting to order at 11 a.m. and open the floor to any public comments. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on with the agenda to item number 3, call on Jonathan Cox Esquire for discussion resolution 2016-23, participate in the Carlisle Auto Industries Inc. Tax Increment Financing District to be created by the Borough of Carlisle and authorize the related actions. Jonathan.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. As we discussed at your Finance Committee meeting a week or so ago, we've been working very hard over the last year or more on putting together a tax increment financing plan for what we're calling the Carlisle Auto Industries Inc. Tax Increment Financing District, which is a property that Carlisle Events and their subsidiary Carlisle Auto Industries Inc. acquired from IAC after the plant closed several years ago. As you know, they've been working very closely with the borough on a redevelopment plan for the property. There are significant public infrastructure improvement requirements, primarily transportation related to restore the street grid pattern through the site, A, B, C, and D streets, and various intersection upgrades around the property, stormwater, sidewalk, street lighting, that sort of public infrastructure associated with the project that is estimated to cost around $15 million, which obviously represents an extraordinary cost. And quite frankly, early on, it's not a cost that should be expected to be borne fully by the private development associated with the site, and would need some sort of economic development financing. So we've been working with the Cumberland County Industrial Development Authority, who I represent as special counsel on the project, for a tax increment financing plan to provide some of that funding. The plan calls for each of the taxing bodies to pledge essentially the incremental tax revenues associated with the development on the property for a period of up to 20 years, 100% of those incremental taxes. So the taxing bodies will continue to receive the taxes on the current assessed value, which is a little over $1 million. But as the vertical construction, as the site is actually developed and the assessed value of the property increases, that'll generate new taxes, and those new taxes will be pledged by the taxing bodies to the Cumberland County IDA, which will issue a TIF revenue bond against that future tax cash flow. Will generate proceeds up front to pay for the public infrastructure costs. The Carlisle Area School District Board of School Directors has approved their resolution to participate in the plan at 100% for 20 years. They did that on July 27th. It was a 6-0 vote. And I can tell you that the week before at their finance committee meeting, the 3 members were not able to be present, all expressed their support. So got great support for the project from the school district. Obviously, the borough has been working very hard on the project for quite some time. As you know, they had a groundbreaking last week. Commissioner Hertzler, you were there, in connection with a grant that they received from the federal government, a Tiger grant that will help close the funding gap between what we think we can fund with the TIF revenues and the total project cost, which was about $5 million. So $15 million total of public infrastructure costs. We hope to be able to generate something in the neighborhood of around $10 million of proceeds from this tax increment financing, and another $5 million from the Tiger grant. So the resolution before you, so under the TIF Act, each of the 2 taxing bodies that don't create the district, the borough actually enacts the ordinance to finally establish the boundaries of the TIF district and establish the district. The county and the school district must take action on whether they are going to participate as contemplated in the TIF plan. Prior to that, we've asked the commissioners to consider that resolution at their next meeting on August 15th. I'm happy to answer any questions on the resolution or the TIF plan or the project. I know we have another separate agenda item to discuss the agreement, but I can summarize that briefly if you'd like. Okay, so the statute, the TIF agreement is really to memorialize the contract among the taxing bodies, the Cumberland County IDA, to memorialize the statutory obligations and the agreements of the parties to participate in the TIF. And it memorializes, it contains the mechanics for the collection of the calculation and collection of the incremental revenues and the process by which those are forwarded to the Industrial Development Authority or a trustee, typically. Corporate bank is usually retained as a trustee for the bondholders, and the TIF revenues are forwarded directly to the bond trustee. So again, it deals with lots of detail with respect, recognizes that there's a 2% discount and typically against face value for folks who pay their taxes early. It recognizes that there's a tax collector typically, there are fees associated with the tax collection process. So all those are netted out. And the taxing bodies are only required to forward to the IDA or the trustee those incremental tax revenues which it actually receives. Again, none of the taxing bodies are, this is not a general obligation. It's not an obligation, it's not a debt obligation of any of the taxing bodies. The only obligation is a contractual obligation to forward any incremental tax revenues that the taxing bodies receive during the period of time in which the TIF is in existence, so up to 20 years.
Is the maximum amount for the TIF at 12.9?
Yes, that is effectively the maximum amount that the TIF plan contemplates that we can borrow. That's based on the projection of the cash flows that would be generated from the development, the existing millage rates, and kind of the best case scenario in the TIF plan, the lowest interest rate, so to speak, 3% interest rate that would generate $12.9 million.
Okay, but that 12.9 is or is not a cap?
It is.
It is a cap, okay.
I'm looking through the resolution and I'm looking for anything about the issue of the library tax.
Yeah, I revised the draft resolution since we last met to make it clear that that the incremental tax revenues only include the generally applicable real estate taxes and do not include special purpose real estate taxes such as the library tax or the borough's fire tax.
So that's, and Keith, you've reviewed that.
I did.
Ms. Kosher.
That's both in the resolution and in the TIF agreement. We made that change.
Do you need, I know you're asking for the board to take action Monday, Mr. Cox. Do you need them also to approve the agreement on that date?
No, the resolution approves the form of the agreement and authorizes the officers of the commissioners to work with you and me to finalize the agreement. If there are any changes, between now and quite frankly, if you have any changes up until the time we signed it, the officers are authorized to work with the solicitors to make those changes and finalize the agreement.
So the adoption resolution makes the agreement self-executing by the board?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Keith, as I understand it, I guess this is law, I don't know, there, in public hearing will be held, but it has to be held by the Borough of Carlisle. And it's my understanding that only one public hearing has to be held.
That's correct.
And that will be sometime in September.
Really, John?
Yeah, they are, council meets this evening to discuss the exact date. We're looking at tentatively September 20th, but we wanted to let the county consider the resolution before we advertise. You have to provide 30 days notice, and then the borough has to wait 3 weeks before they can act on the ordinance. We wanted to try to hold the October 13th council meeting date for consideration of the ordinance. So that kind of put us into a narrow window of the Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, I think, of the 18th, 19th, or 20th. So that, it'll be somewhere about that date, but once council, we should have that information finalized tomorrow, and then we will inform the school district and the county. In fact, the statute requires that a copy of the public hearing notice be provided by first class mail to the county and the school district. So we will do that, of course. We'll also send it to you by email right away.
As I've stated, I think my colleagues have too, we want to make sure people are aware of what's going on and what impacts it may have on them. We, as the county in this case, cannot have an official public hearing, but we want folks to know that they're certainly welcome to come to any of our meetings, bring this up, comment on it.
The only thing I would add to that as well, under the TIF law, there's the requirement of a public hearing. I think it's important to point out that we've had numerous public discussions on this. In addition to that, we made an effort to notify through the media the fact that we would be having this open workshop. I don't know whether there's anyone and would be willing to take any public input, comment before the county would make a decision with respect to participation. I don't know whether or not under public comment, no one stood up. I don't know at this point in time whether there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak to it.
I don't think press release was not released soon enough.
Well, in any
I
event,
think people know.
Yeah,
That's my point.
but I do think that, we are planning to consider action on this on Monday. So if the media, would be interested in advertising the fact that, we have public comment at the beginning of every one of our meetings, and we're planning to consider this on Monday, perhaps sometime over the weekend or between now and when we act on Monday, the public would have an opportunity to come in and voice, asking questions, provide any input that they might have. I think that we as a board, very much want to operate in a transparent fashion and allow for public input on all the issues that come before this board. Having said that, I just want to bring up one question that I've been thinking about, leaving up to us to monitor, but is there anything at all that would limit the administrative costs associated with this TIF financing project? Because I think what's important is that we make sure that most of the funds that are provided for this project actually go to facilitate the project. So I know that this is being administered through the Industrial Development Authority, which essentially the administrative arm of that is the Cumberland Economic Development Corporation, which the members of this board are members of the Cumberland Economic Development Corporation. Certainly would be my intent to keep an eye on keeping administrative costs down.
Certainly. The exact mechanics of that will be finalized in the borrowing documents. some of that being subject to further discussion and negotiation, but typically, the authority chairman or vice chairman, authority officers would be required to approve all disbursements from the TIF project fund to make sure that they were consistent with the purposes of consistent with the TIF plan. In this case, because they are, all of the improvements will be related to public infrastructure, most if not all of which will be actually owned by the borough and contracted for by the borough. I would anticipate that the borough also will have a role in approving disbursements from the TIF fund. We can, if we can continue those discussions, certainly you, through your solicitor and clerk, will have the opportunity to review the borrowing documents. And so we can continue those discussions to make sure that all of the parties are comfortable with the mechanics around the disbursement of funds. The TIF Act does authorize proceeds to be used for soft costs related to the project. So engineering costs, capitalized interest, closings, fees associated with the cost of issuance of the bond, all of those are authorized expenses. So when you say administrative expenses, there will be some ongoing administrative expenses associated with administering the TIF. There will, from time to time, there are questions that come up that may require my time or may require involvement by the authority solicitor or CADIC assistance that could translate into modest administrative expenses. But in my experience, those are modest and can be mitigated and minimized through good management, attention to detail, the process, especially in the first year or two, to make sure that everyone knows what's going on, what their roles and responsibilities are. So,
since this could last 20 years, would it be unreasonable before any disbursements are made, since there could be 3 taxing bodies that represent from each one of those taxing bodies? Okay. And funds that get released.
Typically try not to do that because they're a little burdensome. We want to make sure contractors are getting paid. So as I said, we typically designate the authority officers, which are directly reportable to the county commissioners. The county created the Cumberland County Industrial Development Authority, and all of the officers and members of the authority board serve at will, at your pleasure. So I think there will be sufficient accountability reporting back to you.
Yeah, if I could, I just want to make, because I know that my colleagues had conflicts in their schedules, were not able to attend the groundbreaking for the award of the Tiger Grant, the $5 million Tiger Grant. But that announcement was made, I think it was last week or last?
I think it was the announcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was presented by the Deputy Secretary of the United States Department of Transportation. And there were also a number of participants. And I want to just commend the borough officials. I want to commend our redevelopment authority for everybody that's pulled all these little pieces together. Hopefully move this project forward in what I think is going to be an exciting project. We're fortunate in Cumberland County not to have too many areas of blight and poverty. But the area in and around these brownfield sites, we have some of the lowest income residents. And if all these pieces of this project come together, some of those folks may find new employment opportunities. And it's all about really trying to build a better tomorrow. In any event, I think what was impressed on me at the groundbreaking was a comment from Scott Dunkelberger, who was a longtime employee at the State Department of Community and Economic Development. And what he emphasized is the fact that while we have these different brownfield sites in certain areas of the state of Pennsylvania, the private investment won't automatically occur unless there's also, public involvement in terms of infrastructure improvement and development. So that is the question with respect to the TIF, which is a relatively new economic development tool in Pennsylvania. It hasn't been around all that long. But the idea is to provide for those kind of infrastructure improvements that are necessary for it to make sense for private sector development and redevelopment. So in any event, those are the issues that I think all tie together with respect to our consideration of this proposal.
Are there any other questions or comments for John?
Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind briefly, for the folks here, what this blighted area be turned into something really good? Can you just give us some things that will be built there? I know.
Sure. The Carmel events, obviously, they're in the car show business. They're not developers, so they made a very smart decision, in my view, in bringing Tom Ritchie on, who had many years of professional expertise in developing multi-purpose sites. So he's been instrumental in helping them move the marketing and development for the site forward over the last couple of years. My understanding is the plan shows 8 or 10 lots. The property is 46 acres, will be subdivided. The plan shows 8 or 10 different lots, parcels. One of which is contemplated to be a hotel, a 100-unit hotel that will be kind of a suite product. They've also discussed another building, and they're still looking at various kind of mixed use of office and commercial space, retail space. And then they're looking at 2 or 3 different housing related buildings, one of which is going to be, the thought is to create a auto condo, which there is precedent for in Florida and elsewhere, from what I understand, where people can actually store their classic car and then have a place to stay while they're in town, a loft type apartment above the garage. It's kind of a unique vision and idea. And then some more traditional apartments and condos and townhouses on some of the other properties. That's, I think, the bulk of the parking garage is also contemplated.
Thank you. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, we had an opportunity to tour one of the buildings that has not been torn down, and they've actually retained it. I'm not sure exactly what the building was, but they're turning it into really high-end apartments, and it's wonderful to see. There's a brick building with huge windows, but it's really, really interesting. I'd like to get a chance to go tour that as well. So I was pretty impressed by that. And there's going to be a couple of improvements to the streets leading up to and into this area. We have a couple of roundabouts. I know the roundabouts got really old. It's got the best reviews, but we've got a couple of weird intersections in the borough here that are going to be improved. And so I think, all in all, the project is going to be a good one.
And I think Cumberland Events intends to submit their preliminary subdivision land development plan to the borough, which will have more detail in that regard within the next month or so. Month or two, I believe, is what I heard you say.
Are there any other questions or comments for John? And Keith, just to be sure we have fulfilled both of the agenda items.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 5.
Would you like me to attend on the 15th?
Yes, in case there is a vote,
I will plan on doing that.
but that will be on the agenda for
Very good.
action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Item number 5, call on Jack Harrell with a press release regarding Cumberland County's holding heroin and prescription opiate abuse town hall and medication disposal clinic.
Good morning, Commissioners. In your packet is a press release announcing the 4th Town Hall meeting that our opiate overdose prevention work group will be holding. This is one strategy that we've used for, I guess, a little over a year now. We've had 3 previous Town Hall meetings in Shippensburg, Summerdale, and Newville. What we do is when a community expresses an interest, we come in and host, and present one of these panel discussions. The panel includes our district attorney, Dave Freed, our county coroner, Charlie Hall, and EMS representative, Dwayne Nieves. We will have a representative from the state police at this event because the state police provide the coverage for the South Middleton area. I serve on the panel, and Kristen Nowick, the training coordinator for the RAISE project, a drug and alcohol advocacy and education group. The panel is facilitated by the communications department's Megan Silverstrom. It's our attempt to raise community awareness about the extent of the heroin and opiate problem, to encourage them to take advantage of the helping resources that exist for people who are struggling with an opiate addiction, but also to take advantage of the medication collection boxes and take some other measures to reduce the oversupply of prescription painkillers. We will have, courtesy of the District Attorney's Office, a mobile medication collection box at the Town Hall meeting. So the event is scheduled for Tuesday, August 30th, and it will be co-hosted by South Middleton Township and South Middleton School District. We'll be holding it in the auditorium of Boiling Springs High School.
Questions or comments for Jack? And we've got good attendance at the other ones. I think we'll see good attendance at this one because the problem is not over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Move to item number 6, call Dr. Grossa, discussion of approval of motion to execute declaration of July 2016 voluntary separation judgment contribution of eligible county participants.
Morning. As part of the IRS requirements for the voluntary separation plan, any time one of the enrollees meets their obligations, fulfills their final employment date, an action is required for the governing board to execute a declaration of a voluntary separation benefit contribution for that person. That is what is to be approved on Monday for the one individual in the nursing home VSP who work through their end date in July of next month. Any questions?
Yeah, this is just for one person.
One individual.
Okay.
Like we have 2 or 3 more, which would be.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Moving on then to item number 7, there's 2 items for Kate Molinaro, 2016 CPCG and Home Investment Partnership Programs.
Good morning. The first item we're seeking for your approval is to accept the 2016 program year Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnerships Agreements. Those are for $1,088,198 and $402,489 respectively. And the second item is to execute the administrative agreements with the redevelopment authority to administer both programs on our behalf.
Kate, how much does that amount compare to what we've received previously? This is the projection, or this is what we are getting for 2016?
This is what you are getting for 2016. The home allocation increased, I think by like 3% over last year's allocation, and the CDBG was reduced by about 3% from last year.
So it's pretty much a wash.
It depends on the type of activity, but you're getting more money to do affordable housing projects, and less to do some of the other public investment projects that the county needs to be funded.
So this reflects the change in the participation rate with the...
This does not. That will take effect in 2017. So I won't know, right, we won't know until hopefully by the end of this calendar year, but more likely not until the spring of 2017, what that effect will be.
That just, for the record, that's the issue with Hampton.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments from you? Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
That's good.
Item number 8, Nikki McElway, discussion of children youth needs-based budget for fiscal year 17.
Good morning, Commissioners. Have one. You guys like all the right charts.
You're the chart man.
That's right.
The chart made them.
So I'm here to present the first of 2 presentations for our needs-based budget. So today only requires Larry's signature, and this is for the narrative portion of our budget that I'll be projecting. We'll be back in September to do more detailed about the fiscal part of it. So in writing this budget, you kind of review the past fiscal years, and we've had huge impacts to our practice and many changes in our office. We all remember we started last fiscal year with our budget impacts that lasted far too long. But we worked collaboratively with all of our providers and maintained good services to our families within the county. We continue to collaborate with many departments within the county, JPO, drug and alcohol, and mental health. And we work to offer services so that we're not duplicating anything. During the last fiscal year, we did have our highest rate of turnover at 28%. At one point, we had 11 vacancies. This required a lot of extra help and support from all of my staff. They were able to work together to continue to take cases and ensure families were receiving services. Currently, 56% of my staff, of the casework staff, have 2 years or less experience. So we started to plan for the future and look for ways to increase morale and to retain staff. With your approval, we are adding the second emergency duty person, which I think is going to boost morale in the office. We continue to work with the steering committee, which is a representative for everyone in my agency, each unit, and we talk about things about morale and how to improve the office. Given the nature of how the needs-based budget works, we're always projecting into the future for additional staff and services. In this budget, we're not requesting the addition of any services. Instead, we are going to move our focus to ensuring that we are utilizing the current resources at their fullest potential. We're going to accomplish this by bringing in our providers to have staff meetings with my staff one-on-one to ask questions and make sure they know everything about all of what the providers can provide for our families. We are requesting, though, the addition of some staff for 17-18, specifically 4 clerical, a supervisor, and administrative. The 4 clerical are to help even out the clerical support needed. With the passing of the new laws, a computer system, of course, came with it called CWIS, the Child Welfare Information Solution. That computer system speaks to our computer system. That created a lot more data entry that was put on the caseworkers' time. So our goal is to get the caseworkers back out in the field to spend more time with the families and engage them, and we want to build the clerical staff to help do the paperwork and data entry portion. Our clerical has not been increased in almost over 10 years, but our staff has grown. With the addition of any new staff, we start to look for the need for more supervision oversight. So we are requesting the addition of a casework supervisor and a case manager 1 to help even out the ratio of worker to supervisor. Now, as you guys are aware, these requests are going to go to the state for their approval, but anything would come before you before we would request to fill any positions. but we have to plan for it in our budget 2 years in advance. So the charts in front of you, if you look at our statistics, we are still seeing a slight increase, but it is beginning to level off. So I have on the charts our numbers for 2014, 2015, and what we have for 16.
Nikki, when you say increase in what exactly?
I'll get that. I'm moving. So intake, if you recall, that's our first line of defense, the calls coming in. So from 14 to 15, when the laws changed, we saw an increase of 36.4% on referrals. So that's those referrals that come in and need assessed. From 15 to 16, we're at 7%. In-home, those are the cases where we're working with the families in the home, providing services, either connecting them to community resources, or the caseworkers are doing that. From 14 to 15, we were at 24% increase. From 15 to 16, we're at 2.9%. Placement is obviously when it's needed a removal. From 14 to 15 was 10%, and we're 15 to 16 at 3.3%. So we're starting to see our trend line. If in the previous years of 14, we had the same type of a trend line. Obviously, 15 was an anomaly year, I think, due to all the changes with the laws. I think we're going to have to keep monitoring 16, but I'm seeing our trend line come back. Usually we dip in the summer and, get a little bit bigger when school starts, but then level off. So we're going to have to keep monitoring them through 2016. Given all of our vacancies and new staff, we did have to rely on our purchase providers for most of the year. When we were down a lot of staff, I believe we were putting in more services to families to help ensure that they were being seen. So we are working to rebuild the staff. We spent the last year going back to the basics with all of our trainings. We're going to continue this momentum of rebuilding and work to ensure all staff have education and understanding of available services, both within the community and in our purchase services. I'm going to let Lisa talk a little bit and give you projections on our funding.
This is the budget summary that goes with our needs-based budget. I'll officially have it in early September, but this is just an estimate to give you an overview of where we see we're at. So as Nikki explained in her presentation with the statistics and the increased levels, the first column I'll explain is our fiscal year 15-16. That's the fiscal year that just ended. With the increase in all our services and expenses, I'm anticipating an estimated overmatch of $274,000. This is slightly lower than we projected last year when we were doing the budget. The overmatch basically is based on our revenues and our higher expenses. These revenues that were certified to us by the state were certified back in 2014 when we submitted our needs-based budget, and they were based off of our fiscal year 13-14 actuals. And in fiscal year 13-14, we were not in overmatch. So moving forward, to be able to get us back to where we need to be, we need to show the expenses as we see them at the higher level for the state to be able to match us with the state and local share. So for 16-17, we'll still be in a higher level of overmatch base, and that's based on the state certified. Last year in 2015, when the state certified us for fiscal year 16-17, it was still based off of our actuals in 14-15, which we were still in undermatch in that fiscal year. It always takes 2 years to catch up. So after having those 2 years, of course, the 17-18, I believe, will potentially bring us back into recovery, back into line with where we need to be.
And the reason that we can make that prediction for 17-18 is dependent on the fact that the trend in the volume of cases you're handling appears to have leveled off and declining from the peak of 2015.
Correct.
If all of a sudden that were to reverse, we have to go back to the norm.
Correct.
So that's a big hit to take in 16 and 17, partially a product of the 2-year lag time on the needs-based budget. The reason that won't become increasing exponentially is because your volume of referrals and calls and cases seems to.
now back to you.
Can you put that on mute? Is a decrease.
Yes. Yes.
One thing I would like to add, historically, since fiscal year, I apologize, the last 10 years, historically, the county's percentage of the county share based on our total expenditures has been about 18 or 19%. This fiscal year, as projected as an estimation, the 864,000 is a 22%. But historically, after the year is finalized and the actuals come in, if it was to be the 18 or 19%, that would drop to about 499,000. But you have to show the projection of the higher rate to get the state match.
Just a quick question. And I'm looking at the intake number, which I assume it all starts with the TS.
It does.
That drives all the other things. So,
Correct.
and Larry's accurate that the increases have moderated, but I'm still seeing, those April and May, we're still very sizable increases, and then there's a slight fall off in your June number. So, that's not been a consistent trend. You've had 1 month of fall off,
Right.
preceded by 2 pretty large scale. Do you think you have confidence that the downward trend will continue based?
I do. I think I know that you're looking at January, February, March, obviously they're close. I should have done it more as a line graph. We're starting to see our trend come back. I do think we will always have anomalies. There are different things, when the articles hit the news, when people are trained more, our call volume does go up. But I still feel that there is a trend starting to form here. We're managing the cases much more than we were before.
Okay, I'm looking at the year over year, and in January, February, we're very, very close. Then March, there was a slight tick downward.
Yeah, and
But
then
then
it
in April, May,
Mhm.
were spikes, and then followed by June spikes, slight down tick.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have to keep monitoring it all through the year.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, okay. And the other graphs show much more moderate levels.
And intake is an area since 2014, we actually grew an entire unit. So there's more workers there for that unit as well, so it's helped. Yeah.
I think optimistic is an overstatement. I'm somewhat skeptical. We have to look at what the data says. But Jack was just up here about his presentation. As long as that opioid crisis is going on, you guys are the ones that get a lot of the fallout from that. And until that goes away, forget saying dust
Right.
and those laws, we have issues that are tearing families apart and putting children in very vulnerable situations. So I think we need to monitor this really closely, not assume anything. The needs-based funding mechanism is what it is, and there's a certain amount of play in that. You have to state the full stuff in order that you get credit for it. But we're in a difficult situation, and you guys are on the forefront of everything that's going on around us. So watch for that.
Because even though your growth trends are moderating, your total numbers are comparable to what they were.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, I just came back from the County Commissioners Conference, and I want to commend you, Nicole, and everything we're doing, all of our folks here in the Children and Youth Services in Cumberland County. I mean, there are some horror stories that I picked up on with respect to some other counties. So it's a tough job. It's a tough job, and people need to understand that. Now, I did want to ask, I think I heard that there was maybe a little bit more money in this year's budget for children and youth. Is that correct, Lisa? Like how much more for children and youth, or do you know, or how does that?
I I believe.
How's that impact our bottom line, I guess?
I believe there was a 1.3% increase in the Act 148, which they did increase our certified number, but because they based our certified numbers 2 years ago on our lower actual, they won't change our certified numbers.
2 years ago was
2
pre-state
years
vesting.
ago. Yeah. Two positive things, that it was a good thing that the county was able to continue to provide services through the budget impasse. I know a lot of other counties are going to struggle, but because we were able to continue at the service levels we did, our fiscal year 15-16 actuals will actually help us with the 17-18 certified numbers, because they're going to base it on what we spent this past fiscal year.
Yeah, so if we're looking at this chart, that's what I was trying to understand is, you know, it may cost us a little bit more this year, but once that's factored into the needs-based budget, it should improve our state funding reimbursement. We just won't see it right away, right?
Correct.
Is that's.
It always takes at least 2 years to potentially get back to where you.
So it's gonna cost the county a little bit more this year, but hopefully that'll get built into the formula, and then we'll get back into hopefully more manageable territory with respect to cost, but.
Yes.
I did want to ask, Nicole, you mentioned at the beginning that we had a 28% turnover in staff last year, which I think probably if you looked around the state with respect to children and youth services, they probably have also had probably a lot more than 28% turnover, again, because of the job, because of the demands, because of the new laws. How many with that percentage, I'm just curious, how much of that turnover occurred after July of last year versus the beginning part of the year?
That was from July 1 to June 30th.
Oh, okay.
That 28% was.
So this was
specifically-
after the significant pay increase that most of our
Correct.
care workers
The
got.
28% is is the entire staff, just so you know. It's not just caseworkers.
Okay.
So I've had some people leave, Wendy, retired.
Right.
So it's including everyone. I've had some clerical leave, I've had some turnover in other units as well. So, but yes, it is the caseworkers as well. Those law changes really changed a lot of the philosophy of what we do in our office and put a lot more extra stress. And so I do think some people, it wore some long-term workers out, and they decided they didn't want to do this type of work anymore.
Let me take that a step further. So that's, I understand what you're saying, that number includes everybody, not just the caseworkers. But do we have any read on what the number would be, just looking at the caseworkers and those who were affected by the upgrade in the pay? And what I'm getting at, obviously, is have we seen any effect of better pay and ameliorating your
I would have to go back and take you that number. I mean, I can absolutely see how many caseworkers that was. I can't tell you that.
I understand that would also be a snapshot. What we have to do is take a longer term perspective of that, but I think that would be a helpful number
Okay.
for these to look at.
I think the jury's still out on this, and it is a good question that we need to follow over time. We have the whole thing with the Department of Labor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, the notion is, can that help retention, i.e. by paying a competitive salary, something we have to track and continually update as we get more information.
So specific caseworker
Specific
numbers would be
I will do
good
that.
for us to see.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I do know that at least one of the commissioners from the surrounding county here indicated to me that they've lost a couple of their employees to Cumberland County because of pay issue. But it also, tells me that regardless of the compensation, caseworkers can only handle so much. They only can handle so many cases. And again, there's a lot of demands for the job. Compliment you folks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. I'll think that's my first word done.
You all are back in September,
Yeah, we'll be back in September to do more about the fiscal.
so aside from having the updated financial numbers, let's also
I can bring those.
do the analysis of the turnover. And also, we'll have July numbers
Yep.
to see where that trend is going. If it continues to dissipate somewhat.
I can do that.
And are we, is this just for our information, the
Yes.
scorecard, or we're
The
not going
score.
to discuss that today?
That was just for your information.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been bringing that to Human Services Policy Team.
Yeah.
We're seeing, the point is we're seeing more green and yellow.
Yes, we're finally coming off that red.
But we do still see a consistent warning flag of caseworker experience mental vacancies
Yes.
sustained. But we do see some. Thank you.
Any other questions for our friends from Children? Thanks, Will.
Thank you.
Good work.
All right, before I turn this over to Sandy, we got 10 contracts. We'll try something new. Anything that is an existing contract with no change in the cost, Sandy will simply note it for the record. So I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call on Kim Bittner to discuss the agreement between Aging and Community Services and Central Pennsylvania Food Bank. Kim?
Let's turn the volume on.
Kim? Turn your volume up.
Yeah.
No. Probably have your mute button on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right.
We are amending this contract because we received an additional allocation from the state of about $2,000, and we also had to make an adjustment between shared maintenance and direct purchase due to where the food banks were spending their money.
Are there any questions for Kim? Thank you, Kim.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Children and youth. Lisa. You're here to discuss.
It's not as bad as it looks. It won't take as long. Good morning. I'm here to ask for approval for 27 contracts or addendums. I'll start with, we have 3 fiscal year 15-16 contracts on the agenda today, 2 of which did not ask for an increase, and the third one, Children's Aid Society of Franklin County, asked for a 1% increase in the per diems. Children's Aid Society provides, we utilize them heavily for shelter, foster care, residential, and they are, even with a 1% increase, probably about $100 less in shelter than we pay for Abraxas. So it is a good cost. And their foster cares are a lot lower than other surrounding providers. We then have 6 fiscal year 16-17 contracts. They all are the same per diem as 15-16, except for Commonwealth Affiliates, which is Dr. Kreco. He provides our psychiatric evaluations for our children. Dr. Kreco is asking for a $100 increase from $400 to $500. The last increase he requested was back in 2010. The reason for his increase request is we have more complex cases, a lot of emotional abuses which are required by us to be evaluated. And then the remaining 18 are addendums to our fiscal year 15-16 to extend for 16-17 until we can go through the process of 16-17 contract negotiations.
Lisa, could you describe a little bit more about this Commonwealth Affiliates and the doctor and,
Dr. Kreco?
yeah, is it just one doctor?
Yes.
And how many of our clients does he see?
We utilize him 2 times a month for the whole year. He blocks out a slot for us. We've had, 23 emotional abuses last year we had to use them for. So we try to, if possible, go through the child's insurance, if they have insurance or medical assistance. Typically, those are months of waiting for an evaluation to be scheduled. The reason we use Dr. Preco is to get the eval done quicker. Typically, they're sitting in shelter where we're paying either $176 or $284 a day while they're waiting for an evaluation. So this will move them out of shelter quicker into home work.
Are there any other doctors or providers, that would provide this particular?
Unfortunately, no, because Dr. Krecker is also willing to testify in our court hearings. He knows our practices. A lot of doctors don't want to see our children once they know that they're in court and they may have to testify.
We have used Dr. Manfredi, and he's at the Praxis, but he won't testify for us.
Correct. So if we pay him to do an evaluation and then it goes to court, it's not used.
So essentially, we have one doctor that does this in the whole county?
We could probably start again reaching out. This was a project I think we did a couple of years ago, and just worked with Dr. Kreco to kind of match our need.
I don't know him, I
Yeah.
know nothing,
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question is, if you're a single source,
Mm-hmm.
right, you can probably charge whatever you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd kind of like to see whether, maybe what other options we might be able to consider in the future.
Okay, we can do that.
It's probably a good idea too, because we can utilize it more where we fill our 2 slots and then we call them and see if we can get somebody else in, because emotional abuses have to be seen within 60 days of referral. So to have another option.
Yeah, we can start doing that.
Thank you, ladies. Next, I'd like to call on Annette Scala, joining us BTC, to discuss the agreements for CNRC. Lynette, can you discuss the new agreements for CNRC? The ones that are no-cost contracts and our existing contracts, you do have to go through.
Okay, thank you. The first contract is an addendum to an existing contract. It is a revenue contract. And that is that we provide transportation to one of the Spirit Trust residents. The next one is a new contract for Guardian CFC, and this is a new requirement that has been made for the nursing home, and John Locke and Brad have been working on this new requirement, and the decision has been made to ask for permission to have this study performed for Claremont. And it is in regards to the water supply, and it's a contract for $7,200. The next one is an existing contract. There is no increase to the contract, but it is for our PM systems for the laundry. The next item is the certified testing lab. This is a new contract. This contract is to get the firewalls on the 4th floor tower building tested to ensure that they will meet life safety's requirement to turn that floor into storage. And the last one is a no-cost contract. It is a new contract. It is a transfer agreement for us to be able to use Wooten Dialysis in Carlisle for our dialysis residents. Any questions?
What's the cost of the certified testing lab? It says new contract, but there's no price.
It is $350 for an 8-hour time period on site. It is $85 for the actual certificate, and then there is travel time of 54 cents from Harrisburg. My estimate is that it will not exceed $500.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. On the Guardian contract, $7,200,
Yes.
do we have a, I mean, what's the reason for that? Why do we need to do that, I guess is my question.
Well, there have been lots of talk on this, this plan, having this service done, this plan done for Claremont for several years. It goes back and forth in legislation as to whether it is a requirement or not. And the standard 188-2015 has been basically pushed forward, and it is becoming a requirement for the nursing home to do this. There has been hesitation and resistance on both John's side as well as Brad's side in the interim at the beginning, but we're now to the point where it is we would be recommending it's time to take this next step based on the requirements that are here.
Okay, Lynette, my question is, who approached whom? Did we approach Guardian, or did the Guardian approach us?
I cannot answer that question. I'm not sure if John Loft is on the Allen Road side or not. I can get back to you. My understanding is that John and Brad were in many meetings going back and forth, and that this was the person who we needed to use for this service. I cannot answer more than that.
Okay.
I can have this information to you, or we can hold until Monday.
Okay, I'd like a little more information on the justification and the.
That's not a problem.
And
Not a problem. I will have that to you, and then if it's not acceptable, we can hold it off till the next time.
okay, thank you. Oh, and also, how many other vendors there are that provide this testing or
Okay.
this service?
Not a problem.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Lynette.
you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Next, I'd like to call on Chief Kozak to discuss the submission of the certificate attorney's grant application.
Morning, sir. I'm here for the IFPA grant. We have it for the next 2 years for insurance fraud. It is paid 100% for a county detective to do insurance fraud in the county and also an analyst. The figures are in front of you. The only thing was, I was told to change the total instead of over the period of time of 464,882.2 to 466,880.20. But anyway, to reflect in but that's the grant is 100% paid at no cost to the county.
Any questions?
Once the grant goes away, do we then no longer have the program? Is that what the,
Yeah, that's just up, sir, but it's been here since 1994.
so we receive a grant every year?
Every 2 years, yes, sir. Yes, we have. It goes by our qualification to the county.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian. He's here to discuss the 2 agreements for drug and alcohol.
Good morning, Commissioners. Eagleville Hospital and Pyramid Healthcare are both asking for increases on most of their different programs. They last asked for increases in 13-14. And then Pyramid, we are adding 2 new locations, both detox and rehab at both of those locations. Again, we're just having problems finding places to put people. Our case managers are constantly calling up different locations. Hey, do you have a detox bed? Do you have a rehab bed? So, and the 10% increase there for the one Pyramid location, they changed their long-term rehab to reflect similar sort of program for their short-term. It's just the length of stay. And those are per day numbers. So.
Are there any questions for Brian? Thanks, Brian. Oh, Sylvia.
Good morning.
Well, you're only 2 pages.
Oh, yeah, I'll be very brief if the new rules,
Yes.
early intervention, the first contract is a addendum to 1516, which is for an increase of $393. This was for services provided to early intervention clients that were not paid for under the contract amount for last fiscal year. The other contracts are all early intervention, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and mental health contracts that there are providers that we contract with on a yearly basis and continue to contract with. So there's really no change in any of those contracts.
Thank you, Sylvia. That was wonderful.
Except, I'm just going to make this comment once we, consider action on these and take action on these, okay? I think that my pen may run out of ink. And
Yeah.
Commissioner Eichelberger's and Commissioner DeFilippo's pens might run out of ink when we sign these contracts, which are probably going to, I'm looking at this, it's probably going to be like,
Yes, I
like
think
this.
it's right. And don't forget, we've got stacked more to come.
What about my pens? My pen jump over?
Well, that's right, that's right, yeah, the chief clerk's pen's going to run out.
His arm's going to be enslaved.
Marble top?
Thank you, Sylvia. Next, I'd like to call on Bob Shively, who's joining us video teleconferencing to discuss HEMA's 2016 State Homeland Security Grant Program and one agreement for Carlisle Insurance. Bob?
Good morning. Both are renewals. The first one is the grant for the South Task Force region, and that is just a signature only for us to continue to participate in that grant for the 8 counties collectively. The second one is our yearly renewal with Carlisle Insurance for volunteer firefighters insurance services for the supplemental accident and health coverage. It is up $176, but is also a renewal.
Any questions for Bob? Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call on Tammy Shearer to discuss the 3 agreements for the Recorder of Deeds Office. Tammy?
What you have in front of you are memorandums of understanding. Since 2012, we have been accepting electronically recorded documents in our office. Currently, we have 2 companies. In order to do that, you must go through an electronic recording company. Basically, they're taking responsibility to get us the money, and also they make the filers swear that documents are original and authentic and all that good stuff. We have 2 companies we're currently working with, Simplifile and CSC, and when we signed on in 2012, they were also known as Ingeo, I-N-G-E-O. They changed their name. There are new companies coming on board all the time. A company I've been familiar with since I became recorder is EPN, and I'm trying to get a new agreement with EPN to bring them on as another company. Now, this is not going to increase the number of documents that we record per se, because you need to record certain documents in my office, you need to record them. I'm not out there trying to sell. But what it's doing is it's decreasing traffic flow in our office. By e-recording documents, it is a lot faster. We can reject a document if something is missing immediately and have it on record usually in the same day, so you don't have to send things in mail. We still get some things that are overnighted. The cost of mail is going up. It's not as clean. There is no cost to the county for this. The filers are the ones that actually pay the fee for the service. This is just an understanding saying, hey, we're going through your software to do this. And technically, I don't think they even really go through the county system. They go through our Landix portal. That's what I understand. We're redoing the contract, the memorandum of understanding with Simplifile and CSC, simply because Bob Ziegler signed them, and really we should have probably had commissioners sign them at that point as well, because it is a county organization. So we're just updating those for the record, so we have commissioner signatures, we have my signatures, we have all the understanding. Monies that is deposited from these e-recordings happen overnight, and they're automatically deposited into my recorder deeds bank account. So they're not even deposited into a county account, they're deposited to me, and then I roll out the money at the end of the month where it needs to go. So basically, it's, again, no expense to the county, but I did bring just two quick fun facts that I looked up yesterday. By the end of 2015, e-recordings, 39% of our documents coming in are being recorded electronically. And not every document can be recorded electronically at this point. But as of the end of June, for this year, we're up to 48% e-recording. So, just some fun facts.
Are there any questions for Tammy?
So some people are moving into the 21st century.
And we're now taking credit cards too.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Cindy. While on, was Lynette there? Lynette, you got 3 in a row. Let's start with number 10. Discussion Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Food Safety, Laboratory Services application packet for retail food facilities for the person.
Yes, Commissioners, this week we became aware that there is a licensing requirement that we must have through the Department of Agriculture. And so what we have done here and what we've compiled for you is the application. And the application is with, like I said, the Department of Agriculture, and it's for a retail food facility. According to their regulations, the gift shop that we operate in Claremont meets this requirement. And so we've talked with Keith and we've worked with Keith and Roxanne, and we have completed this application and would like to have your approval on it so that we can submit it.
Are there any questions?
The law changed in 2010.
Okay, is this primarily concern the salad bar there?
Yes, the salad bar and the hot entrees that are served daily, 365 days a year.
Thank you. Any questions for Lynette?
Yes.
All right, keep going, Lynette. Item 11, request to authorize advertising for bids.
The next question, or the next request is to request advertising for a bid for our dietary paper and plastic supplies for both the gift shop area as well as the resident area. Our approximate spending for the year exceeds the limits that would require us to bid, and so this bid is prepared and we're requesting your approval to advertise. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Lynette. Keep going for your 3 policies.
The last 3 are the annual renewal, or in this case, every couple months renewal of the CNRC policies. This is simply the change of the names on the policies as we change to our new administrator, Robert Ritter. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Lynette.
That's all I have then.
Thank you much. Move on to item 13, 2 capital project requests. We'll start with Warden Rice for the prison with a new vehicle purchase.
Good morning. The prisons are seeking authorization to purchase a new vehicle for the purpose of transporting inmates out to medical appointments and other things. The total cost of the vehicle will be $25,541.11. It's replacing a 1992 Chevy Impala, which I believe is the oldest car in the county's fleet. And I promised the maintenance department like 2 years ago I'd get rid of it. But we're also seeking to purchase this out of the inmate canteen fund, which would have no impact on the general fund.
Are you going to go for another Impala?
This would be a Ford, sir. I did seek pricing from 2 dealerships that participated in CoStars, and the for folks to give us a best price for the new home and water.
Are there any questions for Earl?
How many miles does the 92 now have?
Actually, not that many, because most of our transports, of course, are, within Cumberland County. A couple of weeks ago, left our guys sit over at the Hershey Medical Center. So that's fine.
I guess it's too big of a.
Yeah, it's a muscle car now. Because blood,
Probably going to be
It'll
on.
be for sale.
I did do Hondas.
You could probably get antique plates for it.
That's what I was saying. Any questions?
Earl, how much do we use this? Is it used every day?
We're on the road every day, sir, and sometimes both our vehicles are on the road. Going back to the opiate problem everybody's experiencing, when we have pregnant inmates who are on methadone, we're on the road every day with them, 7 days a week.
All right, thanks, Earl.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have with his even fuller mustache still, John Bigger from Vector Control and Weights with the vehicle replacement.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I have, my vehicles aren't quite as old as Earl's, but I have two F-150s or 250s that are 14 years old, so I need to replace one of them. And as with Earl, I've got 2 different bids from CoStar's people, so I'm ready to rock and roll, but just those short of 30,000.
Any questions for John?
John, isn't the F-250 a pretty big truck?
It is, yes.
Is that really needed?
But we keep, yeah, we keep all of our equipment on it, and a lot of our mosquito work is done, off-road, actually where we're going, back lanes, and some of it's like woodland ponds, some of it's rural work that we need to 4-wheel drive, and then we try to carry all of our equipment on all of our trucks so that either one of us, when we're on the road, if we see something that has to do with mosquitoes, I have equipment on board, I can take care of it. Or if someone else is on the road and has a scale inspection they could do, and they're real close to the place, they have a scale kit on board so they can do that also.
Okay, thanks, makes sense.
Sure.
And John, is it true that the radio only plays country music?
That is correct.
All right, thanks, John. We're on to Commissioner Liaison reports. We'll start with Chairman Beasley.
Yeah, both of my meetings from the last time here were canceled, so I have 0 reports.
Thank you. Commissioner Herzl.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll try to keep. I will try to keep this brief. And there's a lot that came out of the County Commissioners Association annual conference that I attended this week. And I just want to mention to my colleagues that within the next few days, and also our chief clerk, you'll be receiving electronically from the County Commissioners Association a packet on voting matters, whereby all of the different proposed resolutions will be up for all of the commissioners' consideration. A couple of ones that I'll just allude to, if you allow me, is the committee that I'm honored to chair, the Assessment and Taxation Committee, has made a couple of suggestions. One of them has to do with our plank in support of granting counties alternative revenue options for the purpose of reducing the burden of property taxes. And in that plank, there is a provision that says implementation by action of the county governing body without referendum. And we added, or committee added, the words with or without referendum. The rationale for that is that we really would like to see the General Assembly move on getting something enacted into law so that we have the ability to consider it on, these optional levies on a county-wide basis. And some of the proposals that have been advanced in the General Assembly, including one by Senator Eichelberger, who's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, contains a provision that would require a referendum. So there was debate on this in the committee, and first it's felt that we are elected representatives of the people and that we should have the ability to consider and take action on these alternatives, again, for the reduction purpose of reducing property taxes. And then the other argument is, well, why wouldn't we perhaps permit the voters to decide, and certainly all of us shouldn't have any fear of the will of the voters. And, I relayed the fact that, in fact, last year here in our own county, Silver Spring Township, voters approved a little bit more in terms of their earned income tax for the purpose of farmland preservation. I reminded the fact that in the city of Reading a number of years ago, voters approved a higher wage tax to lower homeowner property taxes. And in addition to that, some of you may remember, but a number of years ago, through an act of the General Assembly, our school districts were permitted to put a referendum on the ballot on whether or not the voters wanted to eliminate what was the onerous occupational assessment tax that was charged by school districts. And the vast majority of our school districts, I believe, have now done away with the occupational assessment tax through a little bit higher earned income tax. So in any event, that's the proposal, small change. I would prefer that, and I think most of my commissioner colleagues, most of our colleagues from around the state would prefer, since we are elected representatives of the people, to have, us to have the ability to consider these optional alternatives. However, I think what's more important now is that we get hopefully something through the General Assembly. It's not going to happen anymore this session, but hopefully next session we can see some action on this effort, which has been tax fairness plank has been in the County Commissioners Association position papers for many years. In addition to that, there's a new resolution whereby our committee and the association would support legislation that would authorize counties to levy a valuation fee of not to exceed $15 on all recorded deeds and mortgages for the purpose of generating revenues that would assist counties in performing countywide reassessments when it's determined by the county board of commissioners that countywide reassessments are necessary. As you know, there's a significant cost for counties to undertake a countywide reassessment. And this would just provide another tool to generate funds if and when there's a need for countywide reassessment. Okay, then I did have an opportunity to speak in support of the resolution that was submitted by my colleagues and myself in support of an amendment to the Pennsylvania Constitution that would assign the decennial task of district reapportionment for both legislative and congressional seats to an independent and nonpartisan citizens redistricting commission. During the business meeting of the association on Tuesday, I spoke in support of that, and so that will be up for vote by all of our commissioners, colleagues from around the state. One of the issues that I know is of interest to us is this whole matter with respect to the electronics recycling. There's a proposed resolution dealing with that, and very quickly it says that the association supports amendments to the Covered Device Recycling Act that provide local entities with the ability to establish collection sites, including but not limited to county facilities that are willing and able to participate and allow flexibility to determine the means of collection for electronic devices that is the most efficient in a given area. Consider changes to the way target rates are calculated. And last but not least, and there's some other language here, provide sufficient funding by manufacturers to cover costs, including personnel, collection, storage, recycling, and transportation of electronic devices, in consideration for authorization of separate fees at collection sites if manufacturer funding is not sufficient. So that's the proposal that's been advanced by the CCAP Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee. And there's a lot of other resolutions that are up for consideration. You'll be seeing those in the next few days. And I also shared with my colleagues a copy of the remarks that I delivered relative to our proposal on legislative and congressional redistricting. There was, and I delivered to Larry this morning, an executive summary and a complete report, and it has to do with comprehensive behavioral health task force that County Commissioners Association had established. And an awful lot of work went into this, and what this has to do with is some of what we're already involved here in Cumberland County, and that is to be smart on crime and to provide essentially for diversionary programs for treatment. This covers the gamut from those who end up in our prisons who have mental illness problems, and also those who are suffering from addiction. And so I invite my colleagues, this is available online as well, and I'll be happy to share a copy of this, but a lot of work has gone into this. They've tried to identify some best management practices, and this is something that's going to be, ongoing effort as we talk about not only in this state, but the nation, talk about criminal justice reform. And one of the things that came out of that, I went to one of the breakout sessions on that, was the fact that we really need to establish a risk management system so that we can get a better idea as to which offenders actually pose a risk to the public, so that when they come up for adjudication, their cases come for adjudication, that in fact we can either provide the treatment and alternative punishment, but maybe not prison for some of these folks. And then I'll just touch really briefly on as far as I know, it's the first time that a Supreme Court justice ever addressed our County Commissioners Association, but Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice Deborah Todd addressed the final closing session, and I'm trying to get a copy of her remarks, and I'm happy to share that with my colleagues. But she talked in support of the establishment of veterans courts, which is similar, if you will, to, I guess, our drug court here in Cumberland County. But in terms of the purpose behind this is to impose court-administered discipline like those returning soldiers are aware of as a result of service. And when those returning veterans get caught up in the legal system, that there are certain practices that should be followed with respect to perhaps rehabilitation for some of, whether it's traumatic stress disorder or addiction that they face. There are 19 veterans courts in Pennsylvania, and in fact, most of our benchmark counties have established these veterans courts. Now, whether or not it's practical for us to consider, I don't know, but I'll share that information with my colleagues. And then there was also Secretary Teresa Osborne from our state's Department of Aging was also a speaker, And she talked about essentially the challenges that we're going to face moving forward, the baby boom generation, and the revenue constraints. I mean, the one thing that we know is that in Pennsylvania, we're fortunate to have a state lottery that still devotes most of its revenue only for benefits to help our senior citizens. But a lot of those dollars have been diverted for what previously were general fund expenses, even though they're still serving our seniors. And she touched also a little bit on the managed care issue that we're all facing. But in any event, all in all, that's really what I have to report this time. I haven't really collected all my thoughts yet, but as I do, I'll be happy to share them with my colleagues.
Any comments or questions for Commissioner Hertzman?
Jim, since you're the attendee and reported out on this, I have one or two questions.
Sure.
On those things. Just for my clarification, so these resolutions will be voted on when?
They are supposed to be shared with all of our commissioners across the state within 10 days after the conclusion of the conference. How long, and then they're going to be placed on the electronic ballot. And I'm not quite sure how long the balloting continues, but you should be seeing it show up in your email box, within the next few days. So hopefully all of our commissioners will participate, but I don't know exactly when the cutoff date is.
Okay. But this is how the association establishes its lobbying priorities, basically. So hopefully we're going to see it before some of these key issues we've dealt with. One or two questions in that regard. So on the tax reform, well, actually it came out of assessment, but can you give me just a little detail on how that proposal of allowing the counties to choose their revenue sources, is that substantially different than the tax reform proposal which you referenced that CCAP has backed for the last 2 decades plus? Is there anything that's different about that?
Pretty much all the same, Gary. I mean, the one thing that I think is important is it talks not to generate additional revenue, but it does talk, and this has been in our plan over the past number of years, but it talks about essentially. Let me read it to you. I have it in front of me. The association supports action by the Pennsylvania General Assembly to relieve the burden of an equitable local property tax as the principal means of finance for our counties by granting counties broader-based and fairer taxing options in addition to the real estate tax that include the following elements: participation at the discretion of county government, authorization for a county to levy a county in tax of up to 1% on the state personal income tax base, extended counties the authority to levy a county earned income tax up to 1%, authorization for a county to levy a county sales tax of up to 1% on the same basis as the state sales tax, implementation by action of the county governing body, and the suggested changes with or without referendum, provisions to require a county that adopts a new tax base or bases, and this is important, to reduce or repeal existing taxes to assure taxpayers that the result will be revenue neutral.
Okay, that's what I was getting.
And inclusion of language permitting counties not to implement any new state mandate that is not accompanied by state funding. So and that's wishful thinking.
That's
I'm gonna dream. That was a question I had, whether there were any guarantees regarding reduction of offsets of property tax. So that's part of the proposal, and continues to be part of the proposal. The only other thing I had was in regards to assessment. And this is, I'm sounding like a broken record on this, but the flaw in the system currently of assessment is that there is no statewide standard, in my personal opinion, for when an assessment is undertaken. Has there been any further discussion on whether CCAP is going to take a stand on the issue of a statewide standard to help determine what's the appropriate timing for a county to begin reassessment?
Yeah, there's no hard fast, one of the questions that came up, well, okay, with you, if you're, below 85%, let's say, of your complement ratio, should that be a trigger as to when you conduct a reassessment? But no, the committee has not established or discussed any specific. However, with respect to standards on how assessments are conducted and how the assessment appeal process works, those are things that the new, I think, STEB, which is the State Tax Equalization Board, that has now been moved into the Department of Community and Economic Development. And they are supposed to be working on a policy manual with respect to standards, and how to conduct assessments. There's still a lot of discrepancies, or not discrepancies, that's not the right word, a lot of variables with respect to how different counties, do assessments and even, consider appeals and assessments. But in any event, that standardization is one of the things that I think that we support and strive for.
That'll certainly help with creating a marketplace for new vendors for the counties. And it certainly meets a higher standard. So that's potentially good news. But until they address this, the initiation question, we're going to continue to see this huge imbalance. Or the counties are only going to respond to this to court order, which seems to be really a trend. So,
Well, one of the things that I noted is, we here in Cumberland County in the past 16 years have had 3 countywide reassessments. And, one of the things that I brought up is the fact that, if the experts would have had their way, we'd be in the middle of what would have started like 2 or 3 years ago, another reassessment here in Cumberland County. And the fact, there isn't, it is not necessary that we have a reassessment conducted every 4 years, as I think was the prior policy. Some of our counties, and I'll just give you a handful that are undergoing reassessment right now: Blair County and Washington County, and some of these counties haven't conducted reassessments in many decades. There's been talk about a rolling system where you do like 1/3 of the counties 1 year, and then you do the other third of at different. And there's other states have different models that we certainly can look at to how you perform this. But a number of years ago, there was like an effort to provide for statewide reassessment reform, which is probably what we really need. But there's very little, if any, interest on the part of our legislators to consider that and/or enact something along those lines that would require, a certain assessment practice. So, but we could talk about hours of reassessment.
Well, it seems to me almost like the tax reform question. CCAP spends a lot of time and energy developing these proposals, and they tend to go nowhere.
Well, one of the things that, and I'm again support, we're going to create a subcommittee of the Finance Committee, and this is a great time because we don't expect much to occur between now and the end of the current session. But we're going to start to have some meetings with individual legislators, committee jurisdiction, and also legislative leaders. And I've gotten some volunteers from our committee to actually serve on that, to try to see whether we can get something moving in a constructive way, because you're right. We've been talking about this for decades. And, it's been like a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth Sometimes, one house of the legislature will pass something, send it over to the other, or vice versa, but they never seem to pass the same thing, and it never reaches the governor's desk. So, hopefully, right now, the discussion with respect to property tax reform has, essentially fallen off the radar. But I do expect that it's something that's going to be, because it's going to be a continuing issue. And in preparation for the new session coming up next year, I think this is an ideal time to start to have the dialogue with the legislators on the subject of that. So.
Last question is in regards to the cuts to judiciary support. We've had a lot of discussion here. One of the issues that hasn't really been reported on in the media much is that the state balanced its current budget, essentially putting a big hit on the amount of money they distribute to counties. And they are already underfunding their judicial support. So we're going to take a big hit on that. That has to be filled out of the county's general fund, which of course is the property tax. So I'm sure we're not the only county that's going to have a pretty negative effect with the size of that cut. So did CCAP spend any initiative on
Yes,
addressing
I
that
can.
issue?
Yes, and I can find it. I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, or I can't find it right now. But yes,
Can you just circulate that to us, I think, because that is an issue that's, it goes to the heart of this issue of the state legislature, pushing these costs down to the counties, and then we're the bad guys in the situation, and they're balancing the budget on the backs of county taxpayers.
I agree. No, and again, we have a situation here where we've had at least 2 court rulings from our highest courts, because we have a unified judicial system. We're supposed to have a unified judicial system. And the rulings from our state's highest court have been that it should be funded by the state. And the legislature has just ignored that. Not only ignored it,
They're going back.
now reduce the funding. That's a $12 million loss in funding under this year's budget. And there is a provision in the voting matters, and I'll find that area and get it to you, but it essentially not only talks about restoration, but talks about increasing the funding for the reimbursement.
I hope they're going to be active on this issue. It's our bottom line, and it's one that I think that virtually all the counties are going to get hammered by. Plus, it just stands as a stark example of the failure of the legislature here in dealing with their fiscal problems in a responsible way, and essentially making us the scapegoats for their failures. And we can talk about that issue unceasingly. So
well, there's another meeting of the association coming up in Hershey in November, and these issues have been discussed, and like both of my colleagues, I hope you'll be able to make it to the session in November as well, and have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to speak on these issues, and so.
I'd certainly be more inclined to attend more CCAP functions if they were more effective, quite frankly. I understand it's not entirely their fault.
But it is good to have an opportunity to actually, interact with our colleagues, and I think certainly that issue with respect to court funding was one of the items that was talked, not just at the board meeting, but at the regular business meeting as well. It's on the radar. That's definitely on the radar.
Okay, Commissioner Eichelberger.
I have very little actually speak on. So this, I think, was already covered. NHIED. The only thing that really came out of the recent meeting was what was expected, and that is that the new budget is flat funded. So there's no new cuts, but there's also that's sort of aggravation of the situation where the backlogs in the casework continue to increase. So they're glad they didn't get cut, but it's confirmed that that's just flat funding for the month of this Only other things were planning continues to work on the comp plan as I reported out before, and I believe next week is start to work on the future land use map, and then they'll soon be starting the municipal public outreach on the goals and objectives and the future land use map. So we'll be hearing more about that shortly. On the, let's see here. It's disappeared. Okay, and just a reminder on the recycling, next Saturday is the House of Hazardous Waste event. And Justin told me they're expecting a really good turnout then, and that's not really a surprise. Getting a lot of calls from people who haven't seen it in advertising in the newspaper, so we know that's working. As well as the press release was picked up, so we appreciate that support from our friends in the media. I put in another plug for it. It's 9 to 3, next Saturday at Al Road. Also on the electronic recycling, not a whole lot, but the bids are out there, are due next Monday at 1:30. I think it's just a bid opening. Courtesy copies were forwarded to 27 companies. 2 have already indicated to Justin that they're not going to bid. One has called in to express interest. They're also asking about possible changes to the date, but we're not in a position to do that to make an extension right now. Otherwise, we're just waiting to see what kind of response is going to come back to that proposal, and I'll be reporting back to you on that.
If I could, Mayor, I just want to mention that I had an opportunity to talk to Justin here as well. I'm a little concerned about the response that we're getting to the RFP. I had a chance to speak to Representative Bloom the other day at the groundbreaking on this subject, and I suggested to him that what probably would be good at this point in time is if the legislature could lift the ban on the disposal of such items at landfills, at least on a temporary basis until we can get our arms around this. And he seemed to be receptive. I also mentioned that we had the RFP, and he asked to be kept informed as to the status on that. One of the other things that I spoke to Justin about is as we're looking for a response to our RFP, one possibility to consider might be to see whether or not we may be able to enter into an agreement with York County that has a facility in Fairview Township. Since we're already looking at perhaps utilizing funds that we get from Marcellus Shale to fund this, perhaps we could work on an agreement with York County. They have a facility which is relatively close by in Fairview Township. Just some thoughts. Also, I found the resolution number 21, and this is the current proposal. The association supports legislation to increase the funding from the Commonwealth to each county for reimbursement of costs associated with each judge in various judicial districts to $150,000 per year. The previous language was from the current $70,000 per year. They're taking from the current 70 and asking to go to $150,000 per year, with corresponding adjustment annually by the same percentage as the cost of living increases in judicial pay. So there is a proposal to provide for, because the allocation has dropped below $70,000, and that's why that language is being removed. So it's a recognition of the fact that we're going the wrong direction.
Okay. Just on the recycling, I think the thing in the ban is reported into Representative Bloom's legislation. So I'll assume since we haven't heard from him, there's been no movement on any of that. So he had asked previously that we keep him up to date since they're receiving a tremendous number of calls, as I'm sure the other representatives are. So it's clearly an issue that's on the minds of the public and therefore on the minds of their representatives. We're hopeful. Yeah, the authority, some of the authority members have forward a number of ideas, so that, and appreciate the mention of the Fairview Township facility as a possibility.
Might be something for us to pursue, again, on a very limited interim basis.
Well, our one authority member, Vince's former colleague Dave Laker, works for Fairview Township. He's very knowledgeable in what their practices and facilities are, so I'm sure that'll be fair here. That's all I have. Thanks.
Questions, comments from Commissioner Eichelberg? Thank you. Ready to report executive sessions August 1st, 2016, 2:05 p.m. regarding personnel issues, and again August 3rd, 2016, 12:30 p.m. regarding litigation issues. Also make a request for an executive session on this meeting regarding personnel issues. Is there any other business to bring to the attention of the Board of Commissioners? Then we are adjourned.